Hey everyone, this is Dion with Racers360, and welcome to lesson 3 of the Oversteer course. Excited to be with you, excited to be talking more Oversteer. So today we're going to talk about probably one of the more complex things on this, and that's corrections, the timing of those corrections, and the speed of those corrections. So with this subject, it's really hard. It can be really big. There's so many case-by-case variables. Every save is different from one another. So while I'm going to try to be as descriptive as possible, this is one of those inherently tough things to coach from a kind of one size fits all perspective. So for me, before I get into that, the one thing I did want to hit on and talk about is, well, how can I practice getting better at oversteer? And this has been something that our coaches at Racers360 have spent a lot of time kind of debating amongst ourselves and talking about. And to be honest with you, there's not a lot of great scenarios. You could talk about the skid pad. The skid pad's great for car control, but it is an inherently very different thing to purposely induce the slide, hold a slide, and keep the slide going than to make a correction when it's coming up from an area where you're not expecting it. You're trying to correct and save. So I think skid pads are great tools and something that I recommend for all drivers, but I don't necessarily think it's actually the best thing to work on car control. Sorry, not car control, but really saving oversteer. So the two main areas that we go back to time and time again, number one, practicing on old tires. And let's say you have you're working towards a race. Your race is 30 minutes long. A lot of drivers won't drive past that 30-minute mark on that set of tires because sort of, why would I if I'm never going to be competing on it? But for practice purposes, extending that tire life and continuing to go and go beyond where you normally would with that set of tires to where they're really old, the car is going to slide on you more. You're going to get more understeer. You're going to get more oversteer. You're working on all types of car control. So I do think that's a great way to practice. Number two, it sounds a bit strange, but if you're driving a car that has full-on slicks racing tires, I would really recommend taking a step back. Maybe if you can on your car, at least going out and trying to drive a car on street tires. Yes, okay, racing performance street tires, but there's a big reason why. So early in my career, I went through the Skip Barber, and Skip Barber had actually a really good principle on this, where you start off on regional race weekends. We had the treaded tires, and then when you went up to the national level, you then switched over to slicks. The reason why they did this, and the reason why we're big believers in this, is the treaded street tires, they communicate more to the driver than slick racing tires do. So if you were to imagine, let's say that as you get closer and closer to the level of grip, the treaded tires, they start to slide a little bit, they start to make noise, they give you more communication that we're getting close to the limit, we're getting close to the limit, we're getting close to the limit before it actually starts to go over the limit. The slick tire has far less communication. And when you first switch over, it's sort of like you've got grip, you've got grip, you've got grip, and bam, all of a sudden I've got no grip, and what happened? And as you drive more and more and more, you start to develop a feel for the subtleties of a slick tire. It does communicate, but the amount it communicates and the amount of time before it breaks free it communicates are both heavily condensed and much harder to feel. So by taking a step back and developing that feel first on the treaded street tires that communicate more, that slide a little bit more, that want more yaw in the car, and then developing that feel until you're really consistent and can play around with it, then moving on to the slick tires that communicate less, that want less yaw in the car, and that will snap and snap much faster, you'll start to have a higher level of feel for it, and you'll be able to be immediately closer, and you won't be starting off from square zero on college level course. So I do recommend, I think driving on those treaded street tires are a great way to develop feel. Again, I think skid pads have their place. I think they're great, but I do think these two concepts are probably more closely similar to developing the skills that we really need for working on oversteer. And the reason why the feel part is so important is because to really get good at catching the car and playing with oversteer, we have to be able to catch and realize we have that oversteer early. It's one of the most important parts of this whole concept. So what I want to do here is I'm going to start playing some videos of saves that I've made, and then also talk a little bit about the weight transfer on those corrections and how it all comes together. So let's go ahead here and start to share my screen with some video. So to start this off, what I want to do first is share a video of what I would call kind of a quintessential pretty good save. So what we've got going up here is myself at Watkins Glen, and we're approaching the turn 9 area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this full speed to start off with, and I want to kind of highlight just really quick hand positioning, throttle positioning, kind of everything that's going on. But let's watch this full speed first, and then we'll come back and we'll break it down a little bit slower. So the volume will be on. Let's take a listen. Okay, so pretty big moment there. So let's back this up and show what's going on. So inherently in turn 9, we've got a crest. And as a driver, I know we're cresting the front lands first. I'm probably going to have a little bit of oversteer through here, or typically I'm going to have a little bit of oversteer through here. So the important part of why I was able to have a save on this car is because I actually started early on with micro corrections. And as soon as the car really started to come around, I was fast to get my hands around and then back straight again. So let's just kind of slow this really quick here. So you can see this whole way, I'm just a little bit of movements on the steering wheel. Those are micro corrections right at the edge of grip. I'm right at the edge of the grip. And then you actually could tell when you listen to the video, the second that I just touch the throttle, bam, that's when I have this big moment here. Is because I was at the edge of grip. The car was essentially a little bit of drift. And we talked about earlier with weight transfer, the car was already kind of overloading on that right rear tire. And by getting to throttle, notice how you think that would fix the oversteer, but it actually created, it overloaded the amount of grip that right rear tire could hold, and it dumped. So you can see, this is why it's such a case-by-case basis, because yes, typically you want to add rear grip by picking up the throttle, but if the rear is already overloaded, then you're going to have a dump, right? So I dumped, and what I was able to do is I did two things. Because I was slowly just pick up the throttle, as soon as that rear really started to go, I released off the throttle, and I was quick with my hands to really get it to countersteer. Look, full countersteer. But again, notice my hands. I'm not shuffling on the steering wheel. I'm full countersteer. My hands are still at that 9 and 3 o'clock. And then hold it, and then I'm very fast to get my hands straight again, and then make as small amount of corrections as I need to be. So at this point here is where it's really dangerous to overcorrect or get too early back to throttle. Right now, it's about making those small little corrections. You have just had a big moment. You know the car, once it's it's on springs, right? So once I really get it this way, it's going to come up and come the other way. So I'm expecting that, I'm holding it, and I'm ready to it, and I'm anticipating that it's going to come back the other way. I'm ready to correct, and then it starts to, just like a spring, settle down, settle down, settle down. And I'm going to wait until I've got the car collected before I'm aggressively getting back to throttle. So once again, let's go back a little bit. We're coming in. We're seeing on the brakes, just touch the throttle. Now it comes around. Off the throttle completely. I'm catching it. And then I only get back to throttle kind of once I caught that secondary snap back. As I start to get it to settle, that's where I get to throttle and get back after it. So you can see here, you've got to be quick and you've got to be early. If I was any later to get the first big correction in, I wouldn't have caught the car. And if I was shuffling my hands, I wouldn't have been ready for the counter correction to come in. And if I didn't release the throttle, the inside tire would have just been spinning, and that would have caused me to spin. So that sort of leads me in to the next video that I want to show and to talk about, which is a driver that we worked with that didn't catch the car. And it comes into an area that quite often I'm asked about, where, you know, the car's starting to come around, I'm on throttle, and I've been told if I release the throttle, the weight's going to shift forward, it's going to snap. So I've got to stay on the throttle. It's not completely true. So let's now watch this moment. We're coming around here, turn 18 at Coda. We're flat, we're flat, we're flat, we're flat, we're flat. We're building speed, we're building speed, we're building speed. Starts to drop downhill, and then, woo, oversteer, 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 oversteer. Ooh, big, big moment. So what happened here? So we're coming around, where car's got an extreme amount of load. We're flat, we're flat. Let's just go a little bit farther forward, right? We're flat, we're flat, we're flat. We've got some manipulation of speed, right? Coming early, we're releasing off the throttle. And at what point do we know the car's oversteering? So right now, I can see from their hands, this car's starting to get free on me right now. I can see that they're starting to induce countersteer. And now we know for sure there's a lot of oversteer happening right now. We've got big oversteer, big oversteer, big oversteer, tons of yaw in the car. What's happening right now is the outside of the, especially in the rear, is being so much loaded that the inside tire is starting to spin up a little bit. It's starting to rotate, 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 and we're just driving. We're beyond the limit of the car, but we're not getting off the throttle and opening our hands. So because we're just continuing to drive it and we're not helping the weight center itself again, we're eventually going to have just a massive snap. And notice how we're now full countersteer the other way. We've now gone from, oversteering this way to now way oversteer this way, and we've only just released fully off the throttle right now. Our driver, this should not have been nearly as big of a moment. What would have, if we had come in here, we're flat, even if we had made the mistake of not getting the speed manipulation done early, we drive it in the same way. At this point, once I've got a big moment here, and luckily at Coda I can do this, what I'm thinking at this point is no longer I can't release the throttle, I've got to keep a little bit of throttle, or I don't want to lose much time. At this point, I need to get off the throttle. I'm over the limit of the car. I've got to come off. I've got to do it smoothly. And I know if I've got a lot of steering input in the car and I just jump off the throttle, well, it's going to hook, right? So what I'm doing as a driver right now is two things. I'm trying to get my hands straight and smoothly come off the throttle. So if our driver here had smoothly come off the throttle and got their hands straight, essentially accepted defeat, like, whoa, I'm over my head here, I'm going to lose the car if I don't do this, they would have lost some time. They would have driven wide. They probably would have ended up, I don't know, let's say out over here somewhere, gone wide. Maybe I would have lost, let's call it 2 seconds. I probably would have lost a second and a half. That's a lot of time, but I wouldn't have spun. Like that, the spin came here from not coming off the throttle and not getting their hands straight, getting the car collected over them. So just think to yourself, yes, we don't want to just jump off the throttle fast and just keep the same steering input, especially mid to exit high-speed corners. We talked about that in the last lesson about speed manipulation needs to come early. But if we're in trouble and we need to make corrections, we have to make those corrections. We have to come off the throttle, get our hands straight, and ride it out. Those two together would have resulted in this not being a spin. So now let's go to one more video, now to the VIR in a section that's kind of an unexpected oversteer moment. So we're coming out of 5A here, and this would happen to me in qualifying. This is an area that I totally don't expect oversteer. It's an area that I've pretty much never had oversteer before. So let's play this full speed here. Coming in, bam, middle of these S's, rode the curb a little bit too much. And you can see, bam, again, full counter steer moment. Again, hands at 9 and 3 o'clock there. Catch it, collect it, counter steer, go. So now let's turn the volume up. And let's take a listen to what the input sounded like. Off the throttle completely. Let me turn that up just a little bit so we can make sure we all hear that. Let's back this up just a little bit. So notice that as soon as the car started to come around on me, I was off the throttle. So if we come back here, let's play it a little bit more. I am back to full throttle. I ride the curb a little bit too much. And then as soon as I start to make this correction, I'm off the throttle. And then only right now, you can see here, I wait for the big correction to come. Once I finally, I'm not getting on throttle while I'm trying to have the big correction. When I'm big correction, off everything. My pedals are just off. I'm not really braking. I'm not really throttling. I'm just trying to keep the balance as central as possible. I catch it, and I'm not getting the throttle as soon as I catch this way. I'm waiting for the big correction the other way. And as soon as I catch that kind of counter correction, bam, that's where I'm getting back to throttle again. So notice here, it comes in 3 different areas. You've got to identify early, I'm in trouble. You can see right now, I've identified, oh crap, I'm in trouble. I'm coming off the throttle. I'm saving. I think I might have had it here. Nope, got to save it more aggressive. So I'm early and I'm quick to catch. And now I'm expecting, because it's on a spring, for it to really come back the other way. So I'm not picking up the throttle yet. I'm not really attacking the brakes yet. Wait for it to come the other way, catch it, then I get the throttle. I'm only really braking and committing to the brakes once I know, oh crap, I've lost it and I've got no hope to catch it anymore. And that's where I apply the brakes to try and make sure I minimize any impact with the wall or another car or whatever it could be. So as soon as here, as soon as I'm still thinking, okay, I might have this. Let me just wait it out. Okay, I got it. Let me get back to throttle and get out of there. So you can see the core areas here coming off the throttle, corrections, riding it out, go. You've got to be able to identify oversteer as early as possible. That's one of the core principles of being able to save cars and work through it. And that's where feeling the tires, having them communicate with you and listening and feeling them becomes such an important thing. And that's why we think practicing on the treaded tires first allows you to get that feeling on the slick tires more, and you'll be more in tune with what the car's doing underneath you. So hopefully that made sense, and we'll see you at the next lesson.